The fastest way to learn to speak a foreign language is to learn a lot of sentences and to practice saying them aloud a lot. That's it. If you learn around 1,000 sentences, useful practical sentences for the most likely scenarios, you'll be conversational in the language. And if you learn between 5 to 10,000 sentences, that cover all the usual things you talk about and all the interactions and situations you normally have, you'll be fluent. It's as simple as that. Those sentences should include all the vocabulary and grammar up to B2, more or less. How do we learn them? Well, you create your own list of sentences, your personalized list, with everything you want to be able to say in all the situations, interactions that you normally have, and all the topics you normally talk about. I call this your language islands. And I've got my own language islands, but the things I talk about normally and not the ones you talk about, I suppose. So you have to write your own. I'm going to show you in this video exactly how to do it with audio as well. And once you've got them, you need to memorize the vocabulary with mnemonic associations. I'll show you in the video how to do it as well. And then you have to review these sentences over and over again. Read them, listen to them again and again, shadow them. So listen to them and say them aloud over and over again. You can also use the scriptorial technique, read them aloud, anything really that involves reading and listening aloud, repeating things aloud as many times as possible. Spaced repetition, you really need a lot of repetition for this. It might get boring, it will definitely get boring, but it works. This is the fastest way to learn to actually speak a language, right? And finally, you need to do active recall. You need to practice your ability to remember those sentences fast enough and to say them relatively correctly and with decent pronunciation. One more time, you need to learn a lot of sentences through reading, listening, repeating a lot aloud, and by practicing your ability to then remember them for conversation. If you cannot remember your sentences fast enough when you're practicing, you will not be able to remember them fast enough when you are in front of people. So, really important to practice saying them aloud from memory. Writing your language islands is definitely worth it long term, but it can be difficult and time consuming in the beginning. So you can use AI to make it faster and easier. As it says here, around 1,000 language island sentences, enough to be conversational in a language, as long as you learn the right sentences, and 5,000 to 10,000, but usually 5,000 ish are enough to be fluent if you learn them well. So you can use AI to come up with topics and ideas. Basically, you need to prepare sentences for everything you want to say in every normal scenario, about every topic you usually talk about, and for all the interactions and situations you normally have. So, coming up with all of that is not easy. If you just sit down on your own and try to brainstorm, you'll come up with ideas, but we'll probably miss a bunch of stuff because it's hard to think of everything. So, what you can do is instead use this list of situations, like personal life and daily routine, talking about, well, introducing yourself, talking about your goals, your job, studies, career, whatever, hobbies, each one of your hobbies in detail, different trips you've done. Basically, you get a list of things to talk about or situations for which to prepare sentences. And what I recommend is just choosing one. So introducing yourself. Now let's pick something a little bit more, something different. Let's talk about trips. So what you can do is choose a topic and you'll get a bunch of sentences at different levels, but mostly beginner level because again, you want to learn to speak, right? And for that, beginner level sentences are good enough. and you look at a bunch of sentences, and you either answer the questions or you modify the sentences because they won't apply to you. A lot of them, I don't know if you've if you've been to Santorini or to Thailand or whatever, but you just take them and use them as ideas to then write your own. Like, I traveled to whatever place last summer. Have you ever been to this other place? I visited this place. So, or you answer the questions or you use them to talk about places you haven't been to. I traveled to Italy last summer. Have you ever been to Italy? I've never been to Italy. So you get four or five different sentences, different types of sentences. Oh, really? You've never been to Italy? You get a bunch of different sentences out of this one. And then you do the same thing with the second one. And same with the third one. And this way you can get, I mean, some of them will be useless, right? But you can probably get 100 plus sentences out of this, useful sentences to talk about traveling, future trips you want to do, things you've done before, things like that. You can tell stories as well. And you can get all of this for your language islands in a few minutes with just one topic. And then you repeat the same process with another topic. Again, these are easy, introducing yourself, talking about your family, partner, whatever. But when it comes to hobbies or stories, things like that, this will be really helpful. My advice is to write 100, maybe 200 or 300 new sentences for your language islands per day, so that you don't spend several hours writing and writing and writing the first couple of days, and then you've got a massive amount of sentences you need to learn. Instead, start small with the basics, like introductions, things like that, talking about why you're learning the language, talking about your goals, your job, your hobbies, things like that. You learn a few hundred sentences of those. Like, you add maybe 100 or 200 new sentences per day to your islands, and you start learning the previous ones instead of waiting until you've got 5,000 sentences there, and then you will have spent 2 weeks writing and you will not have started learning yet. So yeah, add a few more sentences quickly this way and learn the previous ones. So you get into the habit of reading, listening, shadowing, doing all of that, and memorizing the vocab. This is a very easy way to get new and useful vocab to learn. Yeah, you talk about your hobbies. Let's do this. Hobbies. All right, 40 example sentences for your hobbies. I really enjoy painting. I really like doing this. I really like doing that. Blah, blah, blah. Do you like this? Do you like that? So you learn a bunch of new vocab and also the grammar by doing this. All right? Easy. This is what the finished version of the language islands looks like. The base language here, English or whatever your native language is, and the translation into the target language here. You can get this by using this code with EN for English, so it translates English into your target language of choice, PL being Polish. If you want to learn Spanish, that'd be ES, French would be FR, etc. And it will automatically translate everything into the target language. Then you take this and use text to speech software to create audio files. And now you can learn them. You should read while listening several times. So you play the audio file and you read while listening, ideally by saying it aloud at the same time. So you're shadowing. You do it from start to finish. And in the beginning, you will not know what the meaning of this is for the most part. So you can read both at the same time if you're fast enough, or maybe read these sentences while you listen to the target language. And then the second round, you read while listening and check if you don't remember the meaning of this specific sentence. But it'll be pretty easy to remember for the most part because it's your own words, it's your own sentences about your own life. So you'll remember what you wrote here. If you weren't lazy and if you weren't writing random nonsense, if you actually made an effort and wrote useful sentences, you remember them. And this is how you learn them, right? You read while listening several times from start to finish. You can also create flashcards by downloading it as a CSV file, and you can put it on Anki. I don't like doing it, honestly, because there are much faster and more efficient ways to learn. So what I do is read while listening from start to finish over and over again, while shadowing as well, so that I start getting familiarized with the pronunciation, and then I keep listening to them, lots of reps. I listen to them while going for walks or while working out, doing all kinds of things. I just play it on repeat on my phone, and eventually I'll copy it, paste it on the AI, and do active recall with it. So I'll get the sentences in English and I'll translate them into the target language. You could also do that here as well, though. You could read them in the in English, sorry, and try to say them aloud, and then look at the then you look at the translation and you see if you say it correctly or not. I used to do it like this. I think doing it with AI is better simply because you get feedback. You have to type it and you get feedback on your grammar, on your vocabulary, if you made mistakes, things like that. It will also correct your spelling, and that's not all that important, honestly, if your goal is to speak fluently. If your goal is to be flawless in the language and write like a native speaker, then yeah, you need to learn spelling, obviously. But for the most part, most people want to speak the language, right? And for that, it's not that important. Like, if you miss some accents, or if you like some of these things, or the S said, whatever, if pronunciation is good, spelling's not all that important, honestly. Again, if your goal is to speak. So this is it. These are the language islands. You can see that there are a lot of questions and answers by topic. The more questions and answers there are, and the more uh, different versions of the same sentence there are. So, like, I live in this place. Oh, really? You live in that place? Yes, I live. Like, if you add more and more versions with slightly different variations of the same sentence, the faster you learn to use all the grammar as well. Apart from learning a lot of useful sentences that you can use in conversation. Like I said earlier, really important to do a lot of repetition with this. You can learn 1,000 sentences in a matter of weeks if you do lots of reps with it. You listen to it over and over and over again. You repeat it aloud over and over. All of that stuff. It's boring, but it works. You can memorize all the new vocab of your language islands using mnemonic associations. This is the fastest way of doing it. I recommend using this for nouns, verbs, and adjectives mostly. Ignore grammar words like to, of, I, that kind of stuff in the target language, as well as cognates. If the word is very similar in the target language because they've got the same root, you don't need to create a mnemonic, right? You just remember it. But the rest of the words, all the new words, you take them, like these example words I took from the Portuguese sentences, and you paste them here, and you'll get example mnemonics for each one of these. You should practice this skill, create your own mnemonics, but AI will help you come up with things. Not all of them will be good. I trained it specifically to give you three different mnemonics per word because some of them tend to be pretty bad. It's getting better at it, though. I'm training it. So basically, noche is night, so noit, night, but no idea what that means. Batman's motto, noite is mine. Yeah, I guess this is cognate. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it. Okay, ignore that one. Corrida, race. Car reader, car that reads books while racing. Okay, sounds kind of stupid, silly. Could work if you visualize it. A car that's reading books, a car reader during a race, can make it cartoonish. Core reader, choral run. The first one's pretty good. Cocina, kitchen. Cousin Nina. Cousin Nina's always in the in the kitchen. Cook, singer. Yeah, not so good. Trabalho, troll office, trouble you. Yeah, they tend to be pretty good. Again, you should come up with your own. Use this as mnemonic assistant, but not. You don't necessarily have to use these associations. It's better if you come up with your own. But I understand that for a lot of people, this is a difficult technique. So this will be helpful, having the help of AI. But you should learn to do it on your own, right? Start by using this heavily, and then every day try to use it a little bit less. Academia, gym, a cat in the gym. Okay, academic gym, gym where you lift books instead of weights. That makes sense. It's pretty good. Pessoas, people, pesos. Again, it needs to work for you. It's better if you come up with things on your own, with names of people or whatever that actually means something to you. But it will give you some ideas, right? This exercise, this technique is really important. It's going to be a game changer if you master it. It'll help you memorize vocab way faster. And vocab is really, really important if you want to learn a language. This is how you can create audio files of your personalized list of sentences to learn. You come to TTS Maker or a similar text to speech software like 11 Labs works really well as well. There are lots of them. And you simply paste the text here, your language islands, the sentences you wrote and you translate it into the target language. Now you paste them here, you choose a voice that you like.
TTS Maker profesionalni je generator glasa koji koristi tehnologiju umjetne inteligencije.
I recommend choosing a male voice if you are a man, or a female voice if you're a woman, because you'll be listening to it over and over again, and you want to listen to a voice that you sound like, or that's closer to your real voice, so that you end up imitating that voice. You don't want to sound like someone who's completely different from you. Ideally, I mean, that's my case at least. That's what I recommend. So you paste it, you click here, convert to speech, and that's basically it.
Kako se zoveš?
You get an MP3 file. You can click here and download it. You can listen to it, and you can do your learning by listening to this. Again, I recommend you download them and you create an audio playlist on your phone and also on your computer. So then you can go to the spreadsheet and listen to this while doing the reading and the shadowing and all of that. So you listen to this.
Moje ime je Mikel.
Moje ime je Mikel.
Odakle ste?
Odakle ste?
Ja sam iz Baskije, u Španjolskoj.
U Španjolskoj.
Gdje živiš?
Gdje živiš?
Živim u...
That'd be shadowing. You repeat as simultaneously as possible and trying to sound as close as possible. What I recommend you do is play the audio file like this and listen and repeat over and over and many times with the meaning. Like, I understand these sentences because they're my sentences and it's not a difficult language for me. But if you're learning a difficult language, yeah, have the English in front of you over while you repeat them over and over again until you can both say them easily and with decent pronunciation. And you'll notice when your pronunciation starts improving because, well, at first, if it's a language that sounds very different from yours, you'll struggle to say the whole sentence in one go. But if you keep doing the reps. Eventually, you'll just say it in one go, and you'll notice that the sounds are also more uh, similar to the real thing. And again, if it's a difficult language, by having the meaning in front of you while you repeat them, eventually you'll learn them. But that's basically it. This is how you create audio files. This is the last exercise of this learning plan: active recall, or translation, if you prefer it that way. It's by far the most difficult exercise, but also it's extremely efficient when it comes to developing fluency and also in order to correct mistakes. Because if you are making mistakes when you're translating into the target language, you'll immediately get feedback and see where you made those mistakes. You can do this using AI, like I'm about to do, or you can do this with Anki flashcards if you prefer, or you could also do it with a spreadsheet or with pen and paper if you want. I like AI because it's just more fun, and also it will give you the feedback. It will point out the mistakes you're making instead of you having to figure out where you made the mistakes. If you make a lot of mistakes with your spelling, it's not a big deal unless you want to learn to write really well. If the goal is to develop speaking fluency, you should focus on vocab, using the right words, and grammar, using the right conjugations. And then also, quite important, you should focus on doing this as fast as possible. You need to learn to think fast in the language, because if it takes you forever to think of the right answer when translating from English into the target language while doing this, it will also take you forever to come up with things to say in real life when you're in front of people. So you're developing that skill, the skill of the ability to uh, come up with things to say in the moment. So for that, you need to do it as fast as possible, right? So you get the sentences, welcome and dobro došli. If you've been doing a lot of listening and shadowing with these sentences, you should do this with your language island sentences, by the way. Just paste them here and tell the AI to do it with them. But you should do this after quite a lot of repetition, a lot of reading while listening, a lot of shadowing, so that you know the pronunciation. At least you have an idea of how pronunciation works. So then you can say them aloud while doing it, and you're not butchering it too much. Also, like I said, this is a very difficult exercise. So if you haven't done a lot of repetition before with them, with these sentences that you want to learn, it's going to be very difficult and frustrating. So lots of reps first, lots of listening to them, lots of repeating them aloud, shadowing, and then you do this. Or you do them combined, right? You do half an hour of listening, and then you do 5 minutes of this, or 10 minutes of shadowing, then you do this. But you should do a lot of high rep, easier but uh, high rep and input based learning combined with active recall, much harder but also much more efficient when it comes to making you remember. You should combine both, right? So hello, how are you? Zdravo, kako ste? Like I said, spelling not that important. Moje ime je Miguel. Kako se zoveš? Drago mi je. And you do this with as many sentences as necessary. In my experience, I just did 5 reps here. In my experience, doing around 1,000 reps with your own sentences, as long as you've been listening and repeating those sentences, around 1,000 sentences of translation into the target language will already get you pretty good results. And then after that, it'll just get really easy, and you'll just keep doing it faster and faster, right? Start small with this: 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, and or like 20. 30 sentences a day, and then eventually, after a few weeks, you can do 100 or you can do a couple hundred sentences. Once you get comfortable with it, it'll be much easier for you to do. This exercise will really develop your fluency if you do enough of it regularly, and also get rid of most of the mistakes you're making. Your language islands are the most useful sentences that you can learn because they are your own words and they are for the situations you normally find yourself in and for the topics you usually talk about. So they are high frequency sentences for your own life, but you need to combine them with more vocab because, of course, the sentences that you want to be able to say don't contain all the vocab that you need to know in the language. People will use other words as well, and you need to be able to understand them. Ideally, you'd add all of those to your active vocab. You'll be using them actively, but that's a lot of work and a lot of time. And eventually you want to get there, but before you get there, if you know your language island sentences fluently, you should at least know this passively. You should be able to understand them at least. So, what I recommend you do is take this list and you learn these sentences. At least you learn to understand them, right? These sentences contain around 10,000 of the most common words in any language, and you simply read and listen to them and memorize the vocab with mnemonic associations, and you review them over and over until you understand them. Do you need to learn them by heart, and do you need to be able to use all of this automatically, fluently in conversation? That'd be great, but that's also a lot of time and work because there are 15,000 sentences here. So no, that's not strictly necessary. I'd spend most of my time learning language islands because those are the highest frequency sentences that you'll be using. But again, you should be able to understand all of this. So, what I recommend you do is read it, memorize the vocab, the new vocab, the unknown vocab with mnemonics, and keep reading it. And listen to it as well, review it a few times, and sooner rather than later, you'll be able to understand pretty much everything. Your language islands, if you haven't been lazy, will contain already several thousand of the most common words. So they will help you understand this relatively easily. And then you just have to memorize the new vocab with mnemonics and review it by reading a few times. And this is a simple daily routine that you can follow to apply all of these techniques, all these ideas consistently, and to learn a lot of sentences quickly, to become fluent in whatever language you're trying to learn. All right? You simply have to do these 5 things every single day in this order. Right? First of all, write more language islands. 100 more, a couple hundred more sentences every single day. You take the list of topics and you write more sentences of things you'd like to say. Not all of them will be perfect, not all of them will be super useful, but if you build the habit of doing this daily, you will be able to write a lot of sentences very quickly, and most of them will be useful. Most of them will help you become fluent, right? So simply find another topic you want to talk about, another situation you would like to be able to communicate in, and you can use the help of AI if you want, and you write a bunch of sentences and you add them to your language islands and you create translations and audio files for them. Then you memorize the new vocab in those sentences with mnemonic associations. After that, you learn the sentences themselves, not just the vocab. You read them while listening over and over again with the translation in front of you. You shadow them, you repeat them aloud while listening to them a bunch of times, at least 5 times, right? Then you review the previous language islands, the language islands you wrote the previous days and that you did a lot of reps with. You should try to do at least one round of reviewing the whole list every day because this means that you will not forget them. Spaced repetition is really important. So if you review the whole list every day, and this sounds like a lot, but it's really not if you take into account that you can simply listen to them while doing other things. You can put them in a playlist as MP3 files and you can listen to them while working out, for example. And you can go through thousands of sentences relatively easily in a day. But also, you can do other things like reading them aloud, listening to them and repeating them aloud, etc. Reading while listening. But again, listening while doing other things, as long as you've reviewed these sentences before and you've done a lot of reps with them, to just keep them alive, to not forget them, just listening to them on repeat while doing other things is more than enough, all right? So this is important. Reviewing previous language islands. And finally, active recall. This is the hardest exercise, but also really important because this exercise will determine if you're able to then quickly come up with all those sentences for conversation or not. So you should do a little bit of this every day. Maybe start small because it's difficult, but the more you do it, the easier it will get. Right? You take the sentences in English or whatever your native language is, and you try to translate them into the target language with feedback. And you'll make mistakes, and then you try again and again. And that's it. So you do this today, and tomorrow you do it again. You write more language islands with text and audio. You create mnemonic associations for the vocab. You review them, listen to them, read them, repeat them aloud a few times. Then you do the same with previous ones, although less intensively. Ideally, just listening to them to save time. And you do active recall with the whole thing, with the whole list, right? So slowly but surely, no, pretty fast actually, not that slowly, you'll learn to use all those sentences in real life conversation without prompts, without having to translate, without having the text in front of you, nothing like that. If you do enough recall, you'll be able to then use them naturally. And that's it. This is how you learn thousands of sentences quickly and you learn to speak whatever language that you want to learn fast.